So, from the second to a different day, sorry, 7th to a different day. I mean, we could do the day, try to do the day before as well, because that way we have a little bit of time if we wanted to, continue working on them. Is that,
Monday the 6th.
Monday the 6th at the regular time we hold the meeting?
Yeah.
6 to 8. Okay, so that's the motion to change it to November the 6th. Okay. Tina, we are, with the motions on the floor, to change our next regular meeting, to the day before, Monday, November the 6th, because our regular meeting is at the same time as the 47th. So any discussion about that? Okay, all in favor? Okay, so the motion passes, and we're choosing our regular meeting.
Okay, so I will just need to look into all of the facilities and make sure that we can have a meeting on it.
Perfect.
So I will get back to everybody and confirm that when I'm back in the office.
Okay, great. We're already like. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. Stacey, really appreciate you coming.
Yeah, and I can come to the table so that I'm not upset for you. So I'm Stacey Greco. I'm the Water Resources Program Manager. I've been at EPD for 20 years. I have been looking at the lead property stuff, but my background is mostly water quality, water conservation. So I am a resource for you that is here till 7 o'clock. So I didn't prepare anything formal because I thought you guys had questions that you were wanting. So, and if I'm not able to answer them, I can probably get back with you.
Except on the questions. And did you participate in this part?
I did not. That go around, does anyone need that?
Needs one of them.
Yeah, there you go, between that.
Thank you.
So what we're working on right now with staff is, we're reviewing the special area plan, and like you said, the Board of County Commissioners, they don't adopt it, they accept it. And then what would probably happen is after that, then we would get the special area plan, which is more specific. So kind of as staff, what we're saying is, basically we're putting language for what we would want to see in the special area plan, which would be the more specific of, if you're doing a golf course, what we would want to see on that for nutrient management and water conservation. And basically, we've been advised not to get too specific at this point, kind of like comp plan is like big picture. And then later, when we get that special area plan, that's when we'll get into more of the logistics and another time to review that. Yeah, David.
Yeah. Now, between the time the plan is finalized, right, and when they not approve, but they accept the is that, are you working then with them on the plan, or is that something that they do by themselves?
Imagine that there's some back and forth, just like there's been some back and forth right now. I mean, I know that we'll definitely have chances to review it, because I think everybody, the applicant and the county, the more back and forth we have, the better product we come up with.
And I have a question. In terms of the special area study, like at this point, is there any meaningful changes that would be or could be made to it before it, or is it just kind of it's kind of what it is and it's going to go incredibly?
No, I mean, we are providing staff comments. They're just not done yet. And our attorney kind of looked at them. That's why we do not have them all today. So yes, I think we are providing edits, and EPAC could provide some direction there. One thing that's important to consider is, if the golf course, for example, becomes part of U.S. master plan, typically our ordinances and our rules do not apply on US property. So, one thing that we need to make sure of is, that anything we put in place, if we want to have enforceability over it, that somehow that needs to be worked into there so that there's very crystal clear that we have jurisdiction, and if there becomes issues, that there is a implementation and enforcement plan.
How do you leverage that in if they're pushing back?
Yeah, well, I mean, if this gets put in there as a condition, so basically when you see the staff report, there's going to be kind of introductory language and stuff. The stuff that's really important is the condition. A condition has to be met. So, in the future, if there's ever issues, conditions are things that live along with a property. And planning is not my expertise, so it's Summer or if Mark's on there. If I misuse a word, please correct me. So for example, George, one way that we could do that, we could ask that as part of this, that we have some like MOU, some memorandum of understanding between the county and US that we have jurisdiction over, this golf course or these properties. So something like that.
It's going to be by agreement. If they were just wanting to say donate the golf course and nothing else, we wouldn't have anything to say over them. Correct?
But I think what makes it tricky is if it gets adopted into U.S. master plan, then it's state agency and we have not been able to enforce our other codes on U.S. property.
They
might. That's why I'm saying we would want to build into conditions or make sure that that we would be able to enforce whatever we're asking for.
So what my question was, if that was all they were doing was donating that to the university, then the university made it part of the mass fund. We wouldn't be able to do anything about that because they would be using the bargaining. Correct?
Oh, you're saying like separate from this?
Yeah,
it wasn't.
Yeah.
I guess so, but I don't know with it being in this Hickory Sink area if they are able to do that. I don't know the legalities.
Okay, that was the question because it's a part of the plan, regardless of whether what happens with the rest of the property. That particular piece is going to be a part of the plan.
Yeah, if it's part of the plan, then we'll be able to but.
Well, it's part of the SAF, right? Either whether they use the rest of the property as conservation or whether it's all highly developed, and that's still what they want to do with that. So it seems like that's what we're saying. Is we have to find a way of having it in the understanding of how that property will be managed after the fact.
Yeah, he's been trying. I don't know your name. I'm sorry.
My name's Jay Rosenbeck.
Hey, Jay.
Hi. Has the university heard about this potential agreement, and how have they responded?
Of making sure that the county has enforceability. I do not think so, and I think that's why we don't have staff comments here, because I don't think that discussion of how to make that happen has happened with the applicant or with our attorney. So I think that will be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it sure will, against the background of half the people I talk to on the outside who are environmentalists are just up in arms about this golf course. Not paying any attention to the fact that 85% is going to be set aside, which is much more than regulations require. So it's going to be incumbent. It's going to be less than a bloodbath to see if there can be.
That's not how I understood it. My understanding was that they would either have half.
It'll be important for at least a very serious attempt to have some monitoring and implication around failure to obey, to act according to state of the art. If that can be built in, that may help some folks with this proposal.
And that's a really good point. So the things that we are putting that when they come back, if they come back with a special area plan, to have in there, we would want them to go beyond the current best management practices for golf courses. We would want to see a monitoring plan, and we want that data to be shared with us. We would want them to design it to be as, you know, as many natural areas left, so that they're not using irrigation and fertilizer, or they're minimizing those uses. So any way that we would ask them to evaluate the feasibility of stormwater reuse, that they're gonna have to have stormwater, you know, can we reuse that water? We want them to account for all nutrients, including nutrients from reclaimed water, because that definitely has a nutrient footprint to it also. So those are the types of things that, you know, we would ask for in that plan. And I think for me, like when I look at this and you know, it sounds like kind of your questions are kind of asking, like comparing, you know, a golf course to other uses. As somebody, you know, my main career has been trying to reduce impact from urban landscape, which is mostly, you know, your residential and your commercial. And it is very challenging. You know, once houses get in, you know, you're going to have irrigation, you're going to have fertilizer, and you're going to have, you know, potentially 800 homeowners to reach if you're seeing an issue. Whereas, you know, with a golf course, you know, you have one entity, and, you know, the potential to design it in a way that can have less impact. And I say potential, you know, we need to make sure that it's, you know, golf courses can definitely have impact. They can be designed in a way that they're very high water users, very high chemical users, but, you know, there's also another side of the spectrum where they can be more natural.
The state, I mean, you interacted with them, right, already?
I have not, other people on our staff have.
So, as my understanding is they want to do the very most environmentally friendly golf course possible. Did the staff get that impression?
I do not know, because I was not in those meetings, but we are writing into, you know, our staff recommendations that, you know, we want it to be designed that way. So we should see them address that then in what comes next in the special area plan.
And so in the special area plan, let's say you make all these recommendations and then they say, no, we are not going to do that, and then what? That's a special area plan, right?
Yeah, so then I think at that point, you know, I think we'd have some more back and forth, some negotiations and another public meeting. You know, I think then, you know, staff recommendations to the board would probably not to move forward.
And that's possible.
That is my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that, yeah, and is Mark on the line?
Not yet.
Okay.
I think we said last time that either way, you know, whether they have that landmark, you know, set up for conservation or not, they were going to go ahead and start the very first thing they would do, you know, after getting this in, you start working on the golf course. I don't know if that's going to go.
So for the current golf course that you have had, what, have they coordinated or shared information about that? Do you know how they manage that one, or if they've made any plans for it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do not know anything about that golf course. You know, our department typically does not have jurisdiction on US, so there's really no reason that we would be there. You know, it's a good thought that we could, you know, see, you know, how are they doing that one? That one, I am guessing, has a well. So we probably, to figure out how much water they're using, would probably be challenging. You know, they probably have records on, I imagine that for golf courses that, you know, whoever's managing it, you know, is keeping nutrient management records, you know, could ask for those, because those, you know, potentially are public records, since US has different rules, but that's a good point to look at how their current golf course is performing.
And I think, George was.
Yeah, this is, given how much of an uphill battle this could very well be, are there any ploys, tactics that can induce, I mean, do you find comparable situations, just like the previous question asked about an ongoing negotiation? Are there any tactics that can induce flexibility?
Flexibility into like the management of a
No, I should be more specific. Flexibility with regards to the willingness of the other side to negotiate with me. and be somewhat compliant, willing to play with, to play ball.
I'm not really sure how to answer that. I mean, I had no interactions with the applicant. I would just review the comments that have to do with nutrients and water use.
So I did have, and I don't know if this is gonna help, I did have a conversation about the golf course with Steve, just earlier today, and he did say that the use would be allowed, in that current area with or without the special area.
The golf course.
The golf.
Okay.
So if that helps you negotiating, and, that a golf course facility would be allowed, by right in that area. They're changing the institutional zoning, in order to allow for the cottages and some of the other, the clubhouse and some of the amenities, but the golf course itself could be allowed there.
Thank you. Thank you, Summer.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, one of the points I wanted to, Jay, this was the point I wanted to bring up, because I was reading what people in the community have been saying too. And a bunch of people are saying, oh, I'm fine, and I'm totally for the golf course, but if, the rest of the property is being put into conservation, I'm all for it. And then, there's other people who have read the essay and realized that it could also go the other way, where all the property is highly developed. We could end up with a case where all the rest of the property is highly developed, and there's a golf course.
That's right.
And
We
you
could.
understand that, but I'm not, the community doesn't necessarily understand that. That's something that, that they need to understand.
And so I get to have two questions now. I don't know if you guys can answer that. So, did you just say the golf course is happening regardless of that special area study?
It's allowable.
It's allowable. And who is responsible for allowing it?
It's just under the current zoning and land use, it is an allowable use.
Oh, so they can do it.
Right, we kind of divide things up into by right zoning and things that require a special use permit or, some sort of process like this, and so it's just that it is allowed, it's already an allowable use in that zone. Yeah, it doesn't speak to whether or not it's happening or what, but just.
So could that be used as their ace card? If we don't get cooperation one way, they can just say, well, it's allowed anyway.
Well, you still, because of the size of the property and everything else, we're still going through this process. I think again, so I don't know how helpful that is. It's just, right, if they were a different developer and a different piece of property, I guess you could think of a scenario where they carved it up, right? And just sold it blank with no anything, and just piecemeal sold pieces of that property to different people. That's something. We have regulations. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much. I'm really not feeling well. I'm not thinking straight. So I just want to repeat what Steve said. The golf course is an allowable use in that zoning area. There's not like a special use request or whatnot. The zoning that's requested is to allow for the clubhouse and the cottages.
And the league would have to approve it it's allowed by right, but the league would have to say that, yeah, go ahead, right? They have some say.
Well, this is a completely hypothetical, if the leads didn't own the property and somebody else did and wanted to put a private golf course in there, something along those lines.
Sure.
It's kind of like a complete hypothetical.
Yeah.
It doesn't really apply under the certain scenario at all. It's just if we lived in a different world and somebody else wanted to come in and buy a land and put in,
Yeah.
and do that in this area.
I think we're back to our original point was that, assuming, they want to put the golf course in, or they're going to put the golf course in, I'm assuming that they want the golf course either way, it's in either side of the SES, okay? But if the land doesn't get put in, the rest of the land doesn't put in conservation, they're going to want to develop the remaining land. And obviously, I don't know if that's like that, where the 800 comes in, or whether it's broken, it's less than that due to the golf course being there. But the remaining land, certainly, look, if you want to have a better development path, that's going to give you more money for the return on your money for that property, then you need to negotiate how you use the golf course is used and the understanding you have in the golf course. Right? So that might be the only path you have to have. And for what it's worth, they haven't yet got the conservation plan in place. So right now we're looking at they're going to go with the golf course and want to develop that that whole rest of the acreage to put whatever how many they can property homes they can.
Right, here's, clarification, so you're saying you think that they're wanting to develop the other 85% of the.
Well, it's not putting in conservation. I mean, if the state doesn't buy the property, that's really what it amounts to. If the state doesn't approve the conservation plan for that property, then they've got the property and the only use they have of it is development.
Why wouldn't they buy it?
But they may not want to put the money into that, and they have, people who don't believe conservation is a good use of land. So,
Well, it would be advantage to both the state and a landowner. And then the surrounding area, people in that area.
If you believe that the state legislature thinks that conservation use of land is a good use of land, yeah. I personally have never seen that happen.
See, but I got the impression from our last meeting, or the folks that were doing that, the special area study seemed to suggest that you guys had some incentive for keeping the rest of it, managed in natural area, and that they were willing to negotiate with the state or pull some strings or whatever.
They're willing to put their weight behind that. Because, the legislatures don't listen to anybody from my experience. And they're gonna do what the developers tell them to do. The developers, friends of theirs, probably gonna tell us, we don't want land conservation. They may say, okay, we'll give you a certain percentage of it, 25% of it, I mean, the deal isn't done, okay? But I'm just saying, if we want any kind of path into, not enforcing, but I'm thinking, enticing them to enter into an agreement that's fairly binding in terms of how they structure the management of the golf course. I think then how that land, if they do decide to develop, is developed, that the county does have a bit of say for, saying you can either agree with us or you can go with one house, 35 acres. If we've got that path to work on, then perhaps there's some way of getting them to the table. That was the original question to us asked. Is there a way we have to get them to the table? Negotiate. I think this is the only way there is.
I mean, they are negotiating already. So I don't understand how we
Are they?
get them to the table.
How are they negotiating?
I mean, the league.
Yeah, how are the leagues negotiating?
Well, I thought they are going up in court all the time already, the DEP and others, and they're taking your consideration, right?
They presented us two plans. One plan involved no conservation on the land and the golf course. The other plan called for conservation of most, or however much the land the state is willing to conserve, and the golf course. That was the
And they
plan.
also said
David?
they wanted conservation.
Hmm?
They also said that they want conservation.
Oh,
That
yeah,
their
yeah,
preferred
yeah, of course,
Yeah.
that's what he said, yeah.
I want to ask something real quick. I want to know the golf course that you currently have at the Mark Street, right? Is that going to remain a golf course or is that disappear?
I have no idea.
It will remain golf.
From what I understand, what I could find was that there's only one university, maybe it was two, that owns two golf courses rather than just a typical one, and the other one I found was University of Michigan. So it's not unprecedented for a university to own more than one golf course, but it doesn't seem to be super commonplace. It just seems like,
What is your relative certainty that they would keep it as a golf course based on?
oh, pure speculation based
Oh.
on, I worked in a meeting on that.
That's very valuable real estate.
Right.
To either sell or for the university to build whatever they want on. I can't
Right.
imagine they would keep the golf course in there. I would think that their main motivation in all this is not golf course, but turning the golf course that they have into. I mean, just imagine the value.
That would be, yeah, I think that would be the ideal scenario in my mind.
And supposedly that course, I mean, their justification is that course doesn't, the existing course doesn't meet, I mean, I guess what everybody knows is it doesn't meet the regular NCAA, SEC regulation.
There's no reason for that. There's no real reason for them to hold on to the other golf course if they've got a new one. So the new one's not just a single golf course, it's a 36 hole. So. What size is Parkstone or whatever the name is? How much is, what size is that? It's an 18 hole golf course?
But
Right next-
meanwhile, golf courses
Meadowbrook?
are failing,
No,
golf courses are failing nationally. I mean, it's not popular with young people. It's not a good business investment. General, they're failing. Look at Janesville. I mean, how many have gone under just here? A lot of them.
So then theoretically speaking, would they cancel each other out? Okay, so we give up that one and we have that one, and the new one will actually be run, will be managed better than the old one. I don't know, that's just a hypothesis.
And if they were willing to turn do something specific with the old one, such as plant it over a tree for the whole golf course, that would make a big difference in how I feel about them having this one,
Wait,
I wouldn't hold my
one,
breath.
three.
the old one.
Why would they do that? Are you
No, no, I
kidding?
agree. The old one was very simple because it would straighten, it would solve their problem. I don't know, I'm speaking for myself here, but I think it would change how a lot of conservationists feel about their putting a 36,
The
hole golf course.
UF is pretty obviously a big business, and that place is for sale. You want to,
They've already
you know, Edith Jones Stadium, you can have it.
Right, right.
When the new court, I mean, my understanding is that the land is a little bit more sensitive than where the current court is. So that's
It is definitely different geology. So, I mean, where this, you know, the property that we're talking about, you know, is in the western part of the county where the aquifer is unconfined. So, you know, there are park features there. So it is definitely, I wouldn't look at those as apples.
But yeah, definitely not. But I'm saying that might even get them to the table on this, making this a fairly strict plan, as well as, making sure that any development on the rest of the property is.
And I did want to share, I mean, hard to say what the state will do with the conservation easement. I will, you know, that is within the Santa Fe, the lower Santa Fe and the Ishikapne minimum flows and levels area where the state is very much looking for recharge projects. And I think, you know, a conservation easement, you know, where something isn't going to be developed and you're not going to have all these additional uses of water, I could see something like that scoring high in the state's eyes for that.
I don't mean to be hung up on the existing golf course, but does anybody know, does UF actually own all that land, or they lease it from somebody, or what is the?
Oh, Mark Boston.
But that,
The Mark Boston one, the current one,
yeah,
99% sure they own.
and all of it.
Yeah. And I agree with you. It would be great if that was turned into something that is extremely valuable land. It's tricky because it's right on 34th right there. And I know that they already have traffic flow problems within campus, but they also have removed designations of conservation areas on campus within the last 2 years in order to build and expand on buildings that they have there. So they definitely would claim they need more room. So I will see them expanding.
Glory Village is right across the street.
Yeah.
I mean, ex-Glory Village.
Do you have any other, like, have you worked with you on any other projects in a voluntary fashion where they wanted to kind of be held responsible for any recommendations?
Yeah, so I'm actually working on, right now, they're looking at Lake Alice, so doing a water shed management plan there. So, you know, they have not been held to the same standards as other developments have with stormwater. And so US, you know, very, I think it's something like 50% impervious campus, but there's some stormwater issues because they haven't had to deal with it. And so they are now looking at that, you know, how to address, to do like a stormwater master plan in that Lake Alice watershed. And they hired a facilitator. They're bringing in a bunch of stakeholders. I'm participating in it. So that's been very encouraging. And they are considering joining our Gainesville Clean Water Partnership, which is how we meet our NPDS phase 2 permit. So if they join that agreement, then we'd have some great working relationships to help them with public education. And that's been encouraging.
And so if you say stay, what? Do they have a department?
Yeah, and that's so tricky. It's so tricky, right? I mean, there is no day. I mean, so that is being led by Linda Dixon, who is, I believe, with their facilities department, and she's with several departments. She's got a long list of credentials there.
Used to work for the county
Officially.
in planning, so the committee I was on, the three, and the CEO advisory committee, she was a regular president.
I mean, I think, you know, it's very challenging to speculate, you know, what anyone's gonna do. So, I mean, I think the goal is just to get as, you know, if your goal is to protect the resource, which I think that is probably, and that's the goal of EPD, probably your goal is to get, you know, as much protective language and to make sure that we can apply it, as applicable, you know,
Just one more time, you know, if they believe and others, if they don't agree to EPP suggestions in the special area study, then EPP will make the recommendation, okay, stop, we are not going to move forward. Is that correct? And then the whole thing will fall apart.
so special area study or the special area plan?
The study comes first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The study we can't stop.
we're asking, we're being asked to weigh in on the study.
Say that again,
We're being asked to weigh in on the study,
at this point.
as outlined in the supplement submitted in September.
And to clarify, it's not just PTD, I mean, it's growth management, it's various departments. We will present a staff report and, you know, have recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners.
But how this progresses to a plan is something that we can also weigh in on too.
Yeah, so a lot of what people do, so the conditions in the special, that we'd be asking for, you know, are very important, and that's where we are asking for, like, what we want to see in the plan. So, you know, if they come back with a plan, that's where we're saying, we want to see, you know, for the golf course, a nutrient management plan that reduces fertilizer use. We want to see on the residential, no permanent irrigation, those types of things are what, we will be requesting them to put in the plan.
But,
So as far as the studies, what is it that CDC recommended and the CDC report of that study to be approved? Or is there nothing?
Yeah, they
Or
get
is there
accepted.
something- Is there anything that could?
I don't know, we're getting into speculation as to what politicians will do. Yeah.
I assume that there's a certain structure and, you know, goals that, you know, that the study has to meet, and as long as it meets those, you have to accept it.
And I think, and,
Trying to-
yeah.
They can review, recommend.
and Summer, maybe you will remember the history, so, you know, with the first time that they came and we had this discussion a year ago, I believe that the staff report and everything that staff was asking for, you know, that's when I think that the applicant said, slow down, like, whoa, we don't like the direction this is going. And, you know, then came up with this alternative and now it's coming back. So I think that changed the course last time, was that they felt like, you know, maybe we were asking for things in the public outcry. So I think they switched directions before, and that changed the outcome last time.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Do you feel like there's a possibility of that?
It's difficult to speculate what anyone will do.
The question I answered them, as far as the golf course, they're going to have that regardless, so that's a done deal. As far as I'm concerned.
One thing I like, if the EPD does come up with all of the recommendations that they would like to add to the special area city, prior to our next meeting, I think it would be nice if we got a copy of that and we could motion support it if we'd like.
Yes, and I think that we can get you a copy of staff, you know, the staff report, you know, soon. It just wasn't, you know, ready for today. So, yes, if you're meeting in November, yes, because we'll have to, I mean, if this is going to a board meeting November 7th, I mean, we're gonna have to have it in our agenda management system probably next week. So, I mean, it's close to being done. Yeah.
And we can look at it on the sixth and, you know, and support it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and you know, get something to it.
Stacy?
Yeah.
Got a question. You know, looking at some of the materials that you provided about the course, there's so many decisions to be made, and it's kind of lots of moving parts. You know, are there projections as to the level of use compared to the typical university golf course? or because this is gonna be an NCAA approved course, are we gonna get large numbers of, because the level of use of the golf course apparently has an effect on the amount of nitrogen required. So there are all these moving parts. If one is changed, if one is not anticipated, like the usage, we may have justification for using more nitrogen. Gotta have it, that kind of stuff.
And I think that's why we would recommend monitoring, right? You know, because really, at the end of the day, the thing that's most important is, you know, are you leaching nitrogen, or is nitrogen running off? That's what we don't want to happen. So I think, you know, because of course they're gonna want some flexibility too. We all have a good plan, and then life happens and things change. So I think if we can get stuff in place that, you know, can kind of account for that really what we care about are inputs to the water. So, can they monitor and share that data, report that data, not just monitor, and keep very good records of, you know, how they are managing, so really good nutrient management.
Let me ask you a more technical question, which is kind of why we wanted someone here to do that. The property in which that's going, okay, it's obviously, you know, it's in the area west of, you know, the hill, and then unconfined things like that. What is the, you know, transmissivity of the land there, and what, you know, how easy will it be for there to get, nutrient pollution through the surface, you know, to get into the aquifer from there?
Yeah, I mean, so the aquifer is unconfined there, so that means, you know, stuff goes through pretty quickly. There are some clay lenses in that region. I mean, I don't know, I haven't done, you know, I'm not, you know.
All around. The region.
Yeah, so I mean, there's some areas where you have, you know, kind of localized, you know, we see that in Oakmont. Some lots drain very well and some don't. And that's right next door to there. So it is an area, you know, and it's sparse, it is susceptible to sinkholes. So that would be something we'd want to see too, that they have a sinkhole management plan and, you know, try to design any stormwater to minimize sinkholes, and if any sinkholes form, to, you know, fill them immediately. So yes, this is something that, you know, for the most part, you know, water and pollution, you know, can go down into the aquifer.
And those requirements that you're outlining now would be requirements that you would impose during the planning part of this, as opposed to the study part, or does staff plan to put into their comments on the study supplement that kind of detail?
So our conditions that will be the conditions to the study have specifics of what we'd like to then see in the plan.
Great.
Yeah.
I got a sort of comment and a question. Excuse me. I'm a builder, and a number of years ago, I built a house in Hayes Glen, and there was a lot, not that far from less than a mile. Anyway, there was significant clay that we had to excavate, get out of there. And then I know of another property, you may know it too, but famous with the flooding problem, the Shapiro's over. Maybe you know.
I've heard of this.
Yeah, anyway, all in that area. So there are certainly there's some clay there, but I don't know that it's to create a water holding. It doesn't, it seems like
it's much further to the west. It's further to the west, but there's much less clay.
Well, this subdivision is about the same east to west. It's north of it. That's the Hayes Glen subdivision, but it's east of Parker Road, but not by much. So you know what the clay condition? It doesn't seem like a wet area. It seems very dry.
Yeah, I think that those clay areas, it's really intermittent.
Yeah.
Right, I think of Oakmont, which is right near there. You know, we do there's a lot of new construction there, so we're looking at the landscaping there, and there'll be lots that I step on and I push down into it, and you know, it just doesn't drain, and then like the next street over, they're high and dry. So
This property in Hickory Sink is, you know, like right at the surface, okay? So, you know, we know that there is non-clay, you know, properties right there in the middle of where.
Yeah, it's probably in it.
I have also a comment I did. So I think if US would allow pollution on that golf course, let's say on that new golf course, I think that would be very, very damaging for the effort. Honestly, I mean, that would, you know, just, if that was the publicized, you know, then they would really, I think, get a big hit in terms of public acceptance. And so if we can really monitor what they put in and what goes down, I think that would be, you know, a really, really good tool in possibly being able to change US. I mean, if, you know, if it's happening, that they would.
Well, they practically need to keep the entire property in the ground, you know, sensing, you know, and water, you know, being put out based upon the ground sensing, moisture, you know, technique, and that's usually not used for that kind of property, right? I mean, I don't think there's any golf course I've heard of.
I mean, I know golf courses, I mean,
You
know, they have a professional that runs it because, you know, over irrigation leads to pest issues. So, you know, and they don't want to deal with that. So, yeah, I think it's a good point. Like, and maybe that's, you know, one of your recommendations is that, you know, data is collected and publicly available so that, you know.
Does the state doesn't regulate them at all, included in?
So there is a best management manual for golf courses. So if, you know, if you're designing to that, you know, there's,
Which is written mine.
yeah.
So they would report to this, like to DEP or to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, they would, I mean, you know, they'd have to get, you know, if they put a well in, they'll have to get a consumptive use permit, which means they'll have a water conservation plan, but the plans that typically are with consumptive use permits, they're boilerplate language and there's not, but that's why, you know, we want them to go above and beyond.
Yeah, I have two questions, and one of them I think I already know the answer to, but I'm gonna ask it first. Do we know if this golf course is going to be private, semi-private, or public? If it's private, like Mark Fox did as well. It's not important, I was just curious if we had stayed, you know.
But it is important because if it's public, you're gonna have much more traffic,
Exactly.
much more usage. Yeah.
Yeah, so that leads me, well, but my second point here is that we were talking about, like, you know, stating US or anything that they do that might be environmentally irresponsible, we'll say. But I mean, just the act of building a golf course is kind of environmentally irresponsible in the act of what it does. So, I mean, is it something, essentially, is it our mission to push the US to say, you have the opportunity to create the most environmentally friendly golf course, and here's the steps that we think you should take to do that?
That's what we should do.
Because it's actually not as hard as I was kind of thinking it would be. I looked up as much as I could to find what other golf courses have done to try to claim to be very environmentally friendly, and it's bare minimum stuff. It's stuff that, like, neighborhoods could implement, where it's just essentially saying, you know, in low-lying areas where water gathers, they have a rain garden or some form of water management with native grasses and native plants. And there's a golf course in Naples called Collier's Reserve, which actually has, it's the first golf course to have Audubon signature cooperative sanctuary status. I think US could very easily, so essentially, instead of maybe framing it to say, like, you know, hey, US, don't screw this up because we'll pay you for it, at least the opportunity to say, you're gonna make a new golf course, why not lead the nation in having the most environmentally friendly and the most environmentally capable golf course? I mean, and we've got things like, if it is a public golf course, yeah, there's way more people that's going to be going.
Oh, yeah.
But if it's,
Traffic even in the surrounding area.
right,
Christmas 50 bit here is that almost everywhere where they water, they're gonna have to, you know, if they do it right, for me to even think about it, you know, sign off on it, right? Because they have to have everywhere, it has to be ground sensing, you know, put in, it sense the moisture in the ground. And then the water is spread according to what our computer says will need just that amount, right? So that it doesn't take, and whatever, nutrients need to go into that water, but it's so such that it doesn't go into the aquifer. And that's gonna be really hard to accomplish, but it's doable. It's doable.
Another thing, if you think about a golf course, it's my understanding, you know, that most of the area is not your active play.
Right.
So having those areas, the rough, be natural areas with no irrigation and with native landscaping. And there was a very positive article. Adam Dale is a researcher at UF that was looking at golf courses for pollinators. So,
Right.
you know, that was good that a UF researcher. So,
Grab that thing first
yeah,
as well.
exactly.
Another concern I have is if, you know, this is NCAA, it means they're gonna have tournaments on, you know, conceivably on that. And there's gonna be a lot of people out there. Whenever there's a lot of people, they have to go back and rework the courses after that. And when you're reworking the grass and you're first putting it in, and you're replacing it, you've gotta use nutrients, you've gotta use extra water, and extra nutrients. So I'm concerned about that.
Look at that, UF has a landscaping architecture department. The people that used to, I don't know, they ran it, I knew a couple of them that were, we may actually have run it, they might have retired by now, but they were very environmental. I mean, approaching them, not on, maybe even not on an official, but on an official basis, make them aware of this, and can you guys, you know, get them, hey, you're gonna develop a plan here, I mean, try to get them actively involved in it.
The trick is, they claim that they wanna do everything the right way, okay?
Yeah.
But of course, you know, they didn't really lay out a plan for us, okay? You know, it said here's exactly what we're gonna do, and they also didn't, you know, open themselves up to, you know, being monitored and any control from the county. So those are sorts of things that have to be put in place, I think, to me.
And those things will happen at the special area plan.
Yeah, exactly.
So, we're mainly focusing on the golf course here and kind of assuming scenario one of those, there's like two alternatives on the special area study. For the second, alternative, where it wasn't like all this, you know, wild space that was being managed, and it was like, there was development continuing on it, I believe, on the second,
Let's put that map up.
yeah.
You guys,
And
anything like?
is the county offering any guidance or suggestions on if that second scenario goes through?
I am not sure. I have not seen the staff report in its entirety. Just the sections on the golf course is what I was providing. But that's it was the whole area, it's 800 units is the density.
That's what the proposal would be, again, as compared to last year, which one of the options was 4,000. Just for point of reference.
Because, it's good that we're focusing on the golf course, and I think that is the most kind of salient thing here, but, and the impression I got from everyone, you know, that was presenting at our general meeting last time was that, you know, the scenario one was kind of the scenario they were banking on, and that's the one they wanted to go forward with. But we do have to consider, like, if something else goes through, what do we want that to look like, or how do we make sure that, like, if a plan goes through with the golf course, that majority of the land is still gonna be managed by the state and.
Yeah, so my understanding that.
You guys look at as well? Pretty much, but.
I think either scenario, there will be a special area plan that then follows. So, you know, I think there's that second bite at the apple and to get more details into it. Because they'll have a better idea then too what they're doing. So, you know, what kind of impact do that. Jay's had his hand up for a while.
I probably have misunderstood something, but I thought that scenario one and scenario two this time did not identify we're going to develop it and we're going to have a golf course. Scenario one and two have to do with we're going to put 85% in an easement, which we are pursuing, and we anticipate funding within 18 to 24 months. And scenario two is the golf course, and we want to complete the plan on the golf course first. I don't think scenario one and scenario two have anything to do with development. Didn't they specifically say this supplement from September was 85 preservation, 15 golf course? We're going to do the 15 golf course first to allow time to secure funding for the 85% environmental easement. Down the road, if that easement doesn't happen, isn't funded, then they will come back, I'm sure, with a development plan. But I don't think anything that we're to talk about today and weigh in on has anything to do with their previous development plan. Have I misunderstood that?
You might be right, Dave.
Yeah. And Mark is on, he might be able to.
Oh, let's ask Mark then. That's not how
And
I-
I have to leave. Are there any other nutrient or water conservation questions?
One of the things you guys put in the land is kind of put into conservation. We know what this land looks like. It would, I would want the plan to be, plans them out because there's a lot of there in the land. And it's just a much-
You're saying do like
Yeah,
restoration?
make sure that we're restoring that and they should be part of that.
And that could be something could be in your EPAC recommendations.
Yeah, definitely. I want to make sure it was something that you guys were.
I appreciate it. I'm sorry that I don't have a crystal ball or,
Really?
How have you been doing what you've been doing? the last
I
few years?
right? But I appreciate your time. I think Mark will be able to answer the questions. I think, you know, at this point, you know, we're asking for specific things and then we want them to, you know, reduce water use, you know, reduce fertilizers, but then that next step, we'll see how they're proposing to do that.
Yeah.
So we don't want to be too prescriptive. Yeah.
One quick,
Thank you for everything.
Yeah.
one quick
Yeah.
question. Reclaimed water is endotoxin free? In other words, it's all pathogen free?
So, I mean, reclaimed water, the treated wastewater, you know, it's from the Kanapaha plant. It is chlorinated and then it is dechlorinated before it is sent back up. So, I mean, it is chlorinated to a level that, you know, it is stripped of everything. We know it has nitrogen in it, you know, it has phosphorus in it. You know, as far as, you know, pathogens and bacteria, you know, I think it's, you know, you're not going to have high concentrations. I mean, it's hard to survive that chlorination.
The problem is, one problem is endotoxin, which are fragments of dead bacteria, E. coli. They induce inflammation. You work in a tertiary treatment plant, you work in a big chicken coop, you're getting massive amounts of endotoxin and massive amounts of systemic inflammation.
Yeah, I mean, and that reclaimed water right now is what people are using to irrigate, you know, landscape in that area.
Are there any advisories to stay away from it, like literally?
There are, you're supposed to use purple pipe and have advisories not to drink it.
Yeah, but what about just being near it and breathing vapor?
I am not aware of any, health advisories with, you know, aerosols from, you know, reclaimed water.
Does reclaimed water really add to, you know, to the health of the soil and the environment?
I mean, it would have some nutrients in it, so we're asking them in their nutrient plans to account for the reclaimed water. So, you know, because they can have, you know, 3 milligrams per liter of nitrogen, so we want them to account for that for sure.
One quick question.
Yeah.
You said that there's a county gaining more control, you have an MOU. What does that stand for?
Memorandum of understanding.
Okay.
So that's just one thought. I mean, there's different ways, but my thought was, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty of, with them being a state entity, whether we could have enforcement. So we might want to, you know, get rid of that uncertainty and have something that, you know, the lawyers work on for a year.
We want legal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my attorneys, if they're watching this right now, are probably like trying to like.
Out of the room.
Yes, yeah. Already wanted to. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So now if we can get Mark to answer that question.
Yeah, well, we have the alternative scenario pulled up and there is development all over it.
So in the last meeting, they did say that they've been trying since 2016 to get the state to purchase or this property. To put an easement on it. So I think this is a good point that you should consider. The option is.
And some, so, Alachua County could also chip in, right? That's what they were talking about when we had the last meeting.
Oh, I didn't hear anything about that. No.
Well, that was what they were thinking, but was that responsible?
I-
Because
I-
they fit between the state and then Alaska County, then they come up with the money.
Like some of them could be the county
I don't know.
operation, some of the state. Yeah, I thought I heard that.
We have the conservation areas, now there's a conservation management area that you see there around the golf course. That is, that would be out, that's a county managed conservation. Management. But everything else we're looking at would be state as far as I'm.
Go ahead, Jay.
I have a motion
Okay.
that might focus the discussion.
Sure.
I tried to modify it, based on the discussion today. So if I stumble a little bit, allow me to revise. I move that EPAC recommend that the Board of County Commissioners approve the second supplement to special area study, SDL Timber, Land and Cattle LLP property, prepared by TM and dated September the 19th, 2023, as modified by staff input, with the understanding that the 580 plus minus acres set aside for institutional use golf course will be developed and maintained according to cutting edge environmental, according to the strictest database cutting edge environmental standards, with compliance monitored by the county.
The word approved is like the one thing that I immediately thought, and we can't use the word approved because the SAS isn't an approved process. This is an acceptance process only. Approval goes to the plan, so you have to.
That's a friendly amendment. You'd like me to substitute accept?
Yeah, change that to accept.
Thank you.
And I still think before we do sort of discussion. something-
Well, yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to second it, then we can have a discussion.
No discussion. Okay. Yeah, I think we need to find out before we go along with that. We need to find out first whether it's, we do have a disagreement in terms of our understanding of what the SAS actually says. The SAS, as I saw it, said there's two possible ways of this working, and one of them is with the golf course, and then either one or the other. Then they showed the rest of the property, and one of those particular showed a lot of development in them, and the other one shows it's almost being all in conservation. Okay, so and those were two plans, depending upon I guess how much conservation they were able to get. If they weren't able to get any, then they would go for the other. So those were, or they would push them together and say, okay, we're going to develop this much of it, this much of it to be conservation.
That's not what that committee really did. I mean, haven't we all read that document that was given? It seems to me that what we're considering is very clear.
Well, and that's it. I mean, we disagree on it because that's how I understand from not only just from watching the last meeting, the meeting before last, participating in the last meeting, and also having read it and listening and asking questions specifically about this. That is the answer I got from them. That led me to believe that they have two plans there essentially, or two in the SAS, two different ways of moving forward, depending upon whether they get conservation or not. And this is the one plan shows this is total development, the other one is total conservation. But it might be the plan might be somewhere in the middle.
We under.
I think, my interpretation of what they were saying after the last meeting was, the first scenario is the one they wanted to go with, and that was 85% conservation.
Yeah.
But by law or whatever, they had to have an alternative scenario, and so they made something that was just like kind of generic, and I think, but I agree with you that like, that possibility of developing something that's somewhere between those two is still there. But they were like, the first scenario was the one that they didn't want.
Yeah, they didn't say they were locking themselves into that when they get to the plan. They were saying this is what we'd like to see happen. And I believe him. I believe it really does. He does really want to see that happen. So.
Let's see if Mark can answer that question.
The,
Hey, Mark.
Mark?
hey,
Hey, maybe you.
what has happened is
Hey,
that,
Mark, you're muted.
we
Is
don't.
there a mute button on the
what's
webcam?
that? I'm sorry,
A
what?
mic on it, but then just using one of the speakers.
What am I looking for?
There should be an external speaker coming out.
Oh, you want to turn these on?
Yeah.
Hang on, Mark.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
This,
No, you're right, there's these other
Is this
speakers.
possibly disconnected?
No, he's, Chris, are you tech, here it is, if you could roll forward.
Well, the
Don't want to fold the bond.
Yeah, no, these speakers are here, right? That's,
Yeah, it should be.
yeah, they're plugged in.
Mark, give us
this
the
is the
mic check.
development, this is the development. right here.
They're not on, right?
Yeah.
No, wait. It's plugged in here. Is that the plug to?
Is there a
Oh,
button
there
on
you go.
there? Did you think there was a button on
Mark,
there?
can you talk for me?
That's because they're required to serve a certain amount of property regardless.
You got it.
I thought it was-
Yeah.
Right, but you see, they have development in the other part too, so that's why the overall need to do this and all on top. Which the city.
So the microphone is a little disposable.
The whole separate video. There we go. Okay. I'll use my speaker. Oh, here we go. I found the mute button, everybody. Okay, Mark, we can hear you now.
Okay, the, what prompted this, UF is, they're at a point where they've got, move forward. I mean, it's like the golf course, I mean, for all intents and purposes, the sale has been agreed upon. They haven't closed on it yet, but based on what happens with the SAS. The scenario 1 and 2 options, basically the impetus is the golf course, okay? Because they don't have a commitment on any agencies, process and purchasing a conservation easement. They came up with a scenario 1, scenario 2. The issue is scenario 1, which yes, everybody would love that. I don't know to what degree if that's to, and I'm careful here because I'm being recorded. When you think about it, the Lee family would still own it. They would just be purchased. They would have their development rights purchased. So that means, as contrary to what the family wants, which is basically sell the property and move on. Val wants to get enough money to start a farm up in Thomasville or Thomasville, Georgeville, but quail farm is what he indicated. But I think so, unless they have somebody that's willing to purchase the property with the CE over it, meaning a public agency or multiple public agencies, I don't know realistically how promising scenario 1 comes together. I would love it. I think everybody would. I think it's one of those, like, and like David said, I agree, the Lee family, they would, but I think they knew that if they came in with scenario 2 alone, knowing that scenario 1 is a possibility, I think they would realize that might jeopardize the ability to have the golf course approved. So they want to be able to, the UF be able to have a golf course probably in 2 years up and running, in time for the golf season for the intercollegiate. So they really need to start moving earthwork sooner than later. Now, one of the benefits of the Northeast area is that they can preserve a lot of habitat intermixed with the fairways, as opposed to the southeast corner where they had on their second round had proposed to go where it's just a big pasture, which means they're starting from square one. They've got basically, it's just going to be a bunch of, grass.
We lost you again.
It's not good.
There you go.
It's not going to be very aesthetic. So I think for y'all's purposes, and so now the kicker here for scenario 2, they didn't want to propose a density that would definitely jeopardize the ability to draw the golf course. So and it's not in the service boundary. So they said by right, the 1 unit per 5 acres is how they came up with that 800 units. That doesn't mean that every house has 5 acres. I think it's more like every house has anywhere from 1/4 acre to 1/2 acre to 1 acre, kind of like Flint Rock. Flint Rock has 1 acre lots, and they were able to concentrate all their development on the south half of the property, and the rest of it is in conservation. So from that standpoint, they didn't propose on scenario 2 something that's so pie and so that jeopardizes it, that we, from a standpoint of the SAS, as long as we collectively, meaning the county and the leads, agree to that, that I think from that standpoint, that the golf course, even this kind of like, I'm not saying a lost leader, but it's like in order to get the golf course, they realize that they're going to have to scale back their development plans. So I've never heard them verbally. I've been told that their asking price is $100 million. Now I don't know if that's the conservation easement, which is typically 50% of the appraised value. I heard it was, so that means when we heard $100 million, we thought that was fee simple, basically buy out the property altogether. So I don't know if that means that they'll take 50 million and have contain ownership of the 85% set aside or conservation area, knowing that unless they just donate the property to somebody, which they've been coordinating with Alachua Conservation Trust on some things that might be an option. I don't know to what degree, how this is going to fit within the plans of what they have in mind. I don't know how many millions they, what's their, everybody like to have more money, I guess, but it's like, I don't know what their cutoff would be, is that they have to have that much in order to, because they know from a development standpoint, you're talking decades, a build out. Well, the Lee brothers are not getting any younger, so I don't know that they figure, well, we need to take the money we can get now and go. So obviously it's a lot of, we have no, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes or anything. Now I can't tell you this, the consultant that is doing the ones that y'all saw the last month, the ETM that talk about the golf course, they are the prime consultant for UF. Their concern is not concerned. Their marching orders are only the golf course. They are not responsible for design aspects of whatever happens with the other, rest of the property. And they have no interest in doing that. From what, there have been indications that they've made it clear they want to separate themselves from whatever future aspects of that. So that means that the Lee brothers are going to have to hire another consultant to do the design plan for the scenario 2 option. I don't know if they would go back to using CHW. Or they would we would envision, there's a couple firms locally that we would envision other firms that they would use somebody local that, is politically connected, you might say. So I suspect I know who they would select, but that means that firm is, I'm not saying starting from scratch, but they kind of are, because everything from this point forward is really, after the SAS, is all new. You're going to see all new plans at the SAP level. You're going to have concepts that if in fact, now here's the kicker. By the time they get cranking, they've indicated that they should know more about being able to quote sell the property or sell the conservation easement probably by next spring. And so when they know for sure that they're not, are they going to be able to move forward or not, or they feel confident that what's going to go in or not, that's when they'll start really cranking on the SAP. Obviously, for special area plan, if it's 85%, that's easy. That special area plan will be like 10 pages. It's like and everybody will be hopefully fairly happy with that, because you couldn't expect that otherwise. If it's obviously the development scenario, then is going to be obviously a huge document. Now, having said that, the county's never gone past a special area study, both for public projects or private developer. So we're going into new territory here. There's no standard by which what the county or the consultant has in terms of the special area plan. So we're kind of walking together towards like trying to figure what minimal criteria that we would expect to be in the SAP. And from the SAP, they go into preliminary design and then final design, which is what we see daily. We review. But the SAP is a whole new animal. So I don't know where that happy medium is, and that's important for y'all, because one of the things that the criteria by which they need to meet, let's say they go scenario 2, those issues are going to be critical. Once it gets past that level, it's pretty much done. I mean, you're not going to get major changes from that. There's been issues like this last round, the plan you see there. This is the first time we've seen a town center. That's been never proposed. How do we incorporate that? How does that affect the traffic or, is flow is the, so that's something that we have to, build in, and whether or not it's something that at a staff level, we could recommend that in turn that the board would do. I'm not saying it's not surprising, because it is a large tract of land, and just like Tioga has a town center, Hale Village has a town center. So, I mean, it's not unexpected, but the fact that they picked at that location on Parker Road leaves us some concern about traffic flow. And I'm sure people at Flint Rock they may or may not be supportive of having a town center right across the road from their subdivision. So, that's just, we'll just have to hear that out. I'm sure a lot of that will, become more clear, definitely after SAS. I don't know that come next week that the board's going to want to, because you don't know whether scenario 1 or 2 is going to, be the one that ultimately is proposed at the SAP. So I don't know to what degree they're going to want to have details on that, or dictate exactly where that goes, or, what kind of facilities they're going to offer or whatever. So that will be interesting to see, because that is different than what was in the previous plan. Obviously, as you've seen here, they're taking away the solar farm, which wasn't a big surprise either. Other than that, I think I don't know. That's why it was important that most of our efforts, right, in the recent couple months have been Stacy's bunch, working at it from irrigation and water conservation and nutrient loading issue, because we know under either scenarios, the golf courses, if it gets approved in SAS, that golf course is going in. So
question. It seemed to me that what they were saying also is that the golf course goes in starting right when the study has been accepted. And so they're going to then move ahead with the actually starting to build out, digging the, ground up and all, whatever they need to do for the golf course at that point. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
what will happen is that, and this is critical, this is where we have to tie down a lot of these criteria the best we can up front. Once they purchase the property, they add any property they own or purchase to their master plan. We just call it the master plan. The master plan, I hate to put it like this, but it's almost a self-regulating document. They have their own internal planning staff, engineering staff, where any project they propose within their property, it gets a cursory review, whether it's the Gainesville, Alachua County, any municipality. We just kind of like, as long as that master plan is updated like every 2 or 3 years, and that as long as what they're proposing on meets what was previously approved in their master plan without too big of a difference, then whatever municipality or county that they're located in, you kind of like, yeah, it looks good, it goes forward. Now, so once that master plan's adopted by UF, that pretty much limits the ability for any other regulatory jurisdiction to dictate.
So what that's saying to me is that we could lose any ability to have an MOU with them that gave us any teeth after, as soon as the study is accepted.
As soon as they get their master plan accepted, it makes it very difficult, unless they're like, obviously, have problems with water quality that are off the charts, where the state would have to get involved or something and say, look, you need to cut back here. It's not, I'm not saying that UF was not approachable. They're not going to just put up a wall and say, we don't care what you say. They're going to work with us. But if it became to an issue that's a sticking point where they don't necessarily want to budge, the county's going to be limited in being able to enforce something. Again,
given that, is the county limited in whether they can not accept the study or not? Or do they have to accept the study if it meets all the requirements?
The commission doesn't have to accept the SAS. I mean, if they don't, that could be interesting, because the golf course by right is an acceptable land use for the current zoning. So that wouldn't stop, UF from buying the property and probably putting in a golf course. I can't see, that they could adopt it in their master plan and say, look, we're done. Have a nice day. And then we're kind of like, so that's why the SAS is actually very critical, because if we're going to have some provisions in there, you can get them at a SAS level, then of course an SAP. If you just say, well, we deny your SAS because for whatever reason, then UF's going to go, okay, we're still going to buy the 500 A's and we're going to build a golf course. Have a nice day. So I think, that's why, I think that anybody's thinking they're going to show up the SAS and convince them to deny it. It's like, be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, but then aren't the leaves limited in what they can do?
Pardon?
Then aren't the leaves limited in what they can do with the rest of the property? That's the hold on that.
Well, no, and that's a good point. By right, they can do what they're proposing to do on scenario 2 under the current zoning.
I have a question. So what was our job tonight?
Right.
To talk about the golf course and make recommendations with regard to the golf course, Summer?
Yeah,
And then I also want to know, did you get a response from that guy from US, the golf course guy?
I did not get a response. I forwarded to the consultant, not directly to him, and I did not get a response. I can check back prior to the next meeting. I tried to get at some of those questions by listing just some information that I handed out here earlier, as far as how much nitrogen loading to be expected from septic systems.
And
Mark?
what were we supposed to do today?
Right.
Well, the idea today was to develop your recommendation for the commission at the November 17th.
Okay, focus on the golf course or the whole thing?
Whatever you want to do.
Okay. I thought it was the golf course too, but
I mean, they're here is the entire,
I'm concerned that if we don't focus on the right target, we may miss the whole mark. I mean, the whole the goal. And I mean, that we could squander. So that's, Mark, given the unknowns that you have just presented and the copious unknowns that are floating around in my head right now, what do you recommend we do, given how little time we have? We're not going to have another meeting. The regular meeting will be the day before the vote, the commission meeting. So
Right.
what should we do tonight, ideally?
I would recommend you focus on language that reiterates particularly what Stacy's group has put together for the golf course. And, as far as the other information to cover the basis under scenario 2, is that I'm just suggesting, it's obviously y'all's decision, that the commission consider the by right option that they're proposing, that whether you support it or not, because realistically, they're going to go forward with that no matter what. I think, but the deal is here, is this what they're proposing under scenario 2, if it's not supported one way or the other on the SAS, there's not going to stop them from actually potentially coming in with a development plan of a higher density. I mean, I don't know that what their options would actually be in trying to get that approval, because the only really way they could do that is to annex into the service area. And right now that is not, they recognize that is just, I'm not saying a non-starter, but after what they've gone through over the last basically 2 years, that's a wall that the county has no plans on extending that service boundary for another 30 years. And for them to ask for it and keep pushing it, it's not realistic, because it only benefits them. It doesn't, them being, developer, whoever that may be. It doesn't, in the long run, it may bring in an additional tax base for the county, but at the same time, once you go into the service boundary, you have to provide exponentially more infrastructure improvements. You have to, roadways improvement, extending water lines, wastewater. I'm not saying that, instead of the developer paying for that, it comes on to the taxpayers. And so that's something that, as a county, that the commission's not going to support. And so, at a certain point, years down the line, there may be reach a point where, but right now it's not the case. So,
Mark, sorry, go finish your thought and then I ask a question.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, go ahead and finish your thought and then I have a question.
No, I'm done.
Yeah, so we do have a motion on the floor that I think kind of covers Mark's recommendation as well, and Mark's suggestion as well. No?
I'm wondering I'm still wondering if it's more practical for us to recommend against acceptance unless there is something on the table from UF to make a strong agreement with us, giving us some enforcement rights over how the management of the golf course. Because that we can enforce by the fact that if he wants to do any development on that land other than the 1 per 5 acres, they have to have an agreement with the county. So that's the only negotiating point we've got.
Jake's motion did include oversight by the county.
I don't know if that's completely accurate. So if you have, like what Mark just said, I just want to recap, because there were 2 questions on the floor. One was about Alachua County Trust, or Alachua County Forever. And what I heard Mark say was that there's an option to donate the property to Alachua County Forever, but there's been no option to purchase. The other question on the floor is there an in-between scenario, scenario 3, something different than the scenario 2? What I heard Mark say was that regardless of what the actual final shape looks like, we're still looking at the same density. Right, so the 1 unit per 5 acres, which is the 800, if that's what you're, I just we wanted to make sure we answered the first 2 questions, and then I also heard him say, I mean, we're at this stage, if we have conditions in the special area study, then those conditions really do. And that was what that quadrates what I heard with Steve earlier. So if you put something in there, you ask the commission to put conditions in there now, then those conditions will apply. You can't uphold.
Yeah.
Did I get all that right? Did I recap that properly, Mark?
Yes, if I could kind of tag on to that, one of the things that I would suggest, if y'all felt, one of if it's a, I don't know if you want to call it a sticking point, but one of the things that has always kind of been a debatable issue, and even though ETM is, you know, they're not representing the leads on the UF stuff, it's something that they have purposely, I think, avoided discussing because they don't want to be like drumming up the same debate. And then that is, and you can see it on that figure that's up there now. The thing that ETM is not committed to, that staff is really like hammering, is that for those areas that are potentially developed, that are the crosshatched ones that let me pull it up. Is it orange and white crosshatched? Yeah. Those are areas that we were recommending that development, if it's conducted in those areas, that they are done in a more environmentally, they're not the typical, like, you know, like an oak lot where they just clear everything and it's like these are lots that are like going to include habitat conditions that are going to be included in protection. And so they didn't want to commit to that. They didn't last year when we fought it on it. They're not big areas, but the areas that are in good habitat, not quite as great as the areas you see in green, but yet these are areas, particularly in light of the fact that they're contiguous to those areas, to green, that we felt like if if houses are going to be in those locations, it's going to be a lot more pervious area, a lot more protection areas, going to be bigger lots with, you know, homes that, you know, protect areas. So I think that's just one of those things that had to be worked out in design phase, but they didn't want to commit to that. So,
Martha, didn't you say that, assuming, like, okay, so just for clarity, you were saying that they would maybe try to go with the conservation easement 85%, see if they could get somebody to get on board with that, and then if not, by next spring, they would start looking at the development scenario, and then, can you hear me? Mark, can you hear what I'm saying?
You're probably pretty hard to hear because you're the furthest end of the table.
Okay.
Because the mic is over here.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Mark?
Yes.
Mic is right there.
Okay.
Camera.
Yeah, so just for clarity, when you were talking about how this would unfold, it sounded like you were saying that they would try to go with the 85% conservation easement at first, assuming that SAS gets approved. And then if that wasn't feasible by next spring, they would start looking at the scenario 2, and they would have maybe a different consultant come on board, and what we would end up seeing in the special area plan would look a lot different than what we're looking at right now. Is that correct? Or did I get
yes. I mean, what you're seeing there is so broad brush that it's not really going to look different. What they are going to push is the areas that are orange and white striped, that they want to have regular, just like have those areas the same way as the areas that are orange. that they're not going to set aside anything in those locations. And we were like, no. I mean, and I think it's a small percentage of it. But there's, habitat that's definitely worth preserving. But it was one of those, I'd say concession, because they met the minimum set aside, with the green. But I think we said, look, these other areas, in order to get other credit, for density or whatever, you need to have these set aside. And I think they didn't say no. They just were not, flat out no. It was more like, well, we'll consider that. They at least didn't say take those off the map altogether. So what I'm saying is, under this scenario 2, that I would suggest that it's like support staff's recommendation that those areas, it says right there, Alachua County recommended development standard open space. So there's more flexibility and trying to preserve some of that area than if it was just regular residential.
Just out of curiosity, you seem to not think that the 85% conservation easement was realistic, or suggesting that maybe it wasn't as highly likely as we originally thought. Is that correct?
Can you put scenario 1 on there?
Sure.
I can't recall exactly where the 85% was. I'm pretty sure, but I don't want to miss, because they kind of did a little when we sit down with them on presentations, they kind of struck through a couple areas and added a couple areas, and I'm like going, what are you doing here? It's like, you're showing us something, but then you strike through it. Well, which is it? You proposing this or not proposing this? So,
Is that still the? I think that's. It is, okay.
Yeah.
This is all easement.
While you wait, what does that high rise, what does that mean?
The county doesn't need, I think the county doesn't need to approve anything, it's just, it'll allow them to be.
Did you?
By right means it's allowed without any sort of special, rezoning or special permission by the commission. Did you see that, Mark?
Yes, I thank you. The area in particular, you see that on the very south east side, most of it's pasture. They actually had it like that, and then they struck through it, and it was like, well, which is it? And they kind of implied, well, we're thinking more like houses down there. So then now they came back and put it on there, so which is good. But I think, in fairness to them, they were thinking probably, well, we're not going to be able to sell this pasture for a conservation easement. We're not going to get an agency willing to buy that portion. We don't know to what degree any agency is going to buy any portion, but we know that they did go after federal funding last spring. There was supposedly like $300 million available over the whole country that they were going to have to allocate by May. And I don't know what happened with that, whether or not the Senate extended that deadline or took those money or what. But when you figured that they were looking for 100 million and this is supposed to be 300 million nationwide, that they weren't going to throw 100 million at just, one location. So I don't know to what degree any of that. It was like it was on the ag bill. But we don't know where else they put their name in for funding. We've made offers at the county. I think back years ago, they offered like 11 million. And when they wanted 50 million or something, but you know, one of the things that helps them, and this is where it gets kind of funky, you know, when you can get your zoning in place to have a higher residential component, your appraised value goes up. So, you know, from that standpoint, that makes it more valuable on paper for conservation purposes and makes it easier for agencies, resource agencies that are purchasing, you know, lands for conservation to be able to allocate more money than they could if it's just, you know, a rural ag, you know, property. So,
You know, aside from on the scenario 2, where you have the orange and white hash that you were saying the county was recommending that be a more environmentally friendly developed area. Do you know if the county is making any other recommendations with respect to scenario 2 in terms of like density or anything like that? To include on the SAS before it gets approved or accepted?
well, that's a good question.
Because I know EPAC, like when the first SAS came out, EPAC did come up with some conditions that we recommended in terms of density and things like that. When the scenarios that were out on the table all included development. I don't know if we want to revisit those and recommend something for the scenarios.
Well, so my recollection is what EPAC came up with was the 4,000 houses, and that's what Summer also read. But apparently now it's 800 residents, and I like the 800 much better.
Yeah. Yeah, these are two very different scenarios from what we saw the first time around. Yeah.
I think the idea of supporting staff on this, and you know, at this point in time, is good. And I do like also the idea of making sure that we recommend the board's acceptance be dependent upon us getting something locked in, you know, with them about, you know, with you or the representative of you the bill or whatever it is, that we get some kind of memorandum of understanding in place with T. I think that's something else, and I'm sure the county's going to come up with that, but they haven't yet done that, so we probably have to wait until our next meeting to actually make a recommendation strongly on it.
I mean, I think that sounds like it would get at most of what you're asking about, and regardless of whether or not the county recommends it, if you feel that management of the golf course is the key, then, I mean, y'all can make whatever recommendation you see fit at this point in time.
Jay, I think your motion did include monitoring as a condition, right? And
Yes.
supporting staff. Can you just read that motion one more time and it's on the table and we're in?
Sure. Want me to read the whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay. I move the EPAC recommend that the Board of County Commissioners accept the second supplement to Special Area Study SDL Timberland and Cattle LLP property prepared by ETM and dated September the 19th, 2023, as modified by staff input, with the understanding that the 580 plus or minus acres set aside for institutional use will be developed and maintained according to cutting edge, strict database environmental standards with compliance monitored by the county.
And can you put the memorandum of understanding in there somewhere?
Yeah, that compliance lead, it didn't refer specifically to the property that UF was taking over. I think that's the key part that you can. The other thing is it's talking about that they accept, you know, based upon there's some stuff about that kind of. I think it needs to be only if. I mean, it's needed dependent there. If it's, you know, if it's, you know, it needs the county.
I'm saying as modified by the county. I'm saying we're only supporting this. Turns out to be the first scenario. If staff recommendations are
Met.
included.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Are you saying that?
Yes,
I didn't hear that.
prepared by ETM and dated September 1920, as modified by staffing.
Now, we may want to modify that come our meeting.
Jesus staff. I don't know staff, county staff.
Yeah,
County,
you didn't say
county.
that.
Yeah, he-
Well, no, he said staff.
yeah, because
Well, it's
I know that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, wasn't I modified by staff English?
Yeah, what I wanted to try to capture there was that staff is evaluating, presumably, all of this, and they're gonna have some recommendations. I wanted us to recognize that simply accepting the document as ETM submitted it is not good enough for us. We want the document as modified by staff recommendation.
And
That covers it.
can you put, with the staff, I really think it needs to be crystal clear with staff. Can you put EPD staff?
How about if I put counties?
Put AC,
Well, but-
EPD on there, and that's like now EPD.
Yeah.
Put what?
I like to recommend that you
AC.
consider tabling this till the next meeting, because after we get the report from staff, we may be able to be, better to, plus we may be able to work.
Then you're gonna
like
have to vote it down?
Yeah,
Yeah.
No.
Well, no,
I
if we
mean,
say
yes,
table it,
but
then you vote it down, it just gets set aside.
I thought we are supposed to provide the recommendation before the next meeting.
I thought we had to have recommendation of some kind of.
Right, but they
meeting.
just changed the next meeting to a night earlier.
Yeah, but
So that, I mean, you'd still be getting something in the night before commission meeting, which is pretty hard to do. You want it to go into the commission's packet.
Yeah, because
Like, in order for these things to be put, the commission gets their packet in advance.
Yeah.
If you really want your information to go in the packet and to be reviewed and considered by the commission,
Yeah.
I would do that tonight.
Yeah.
Well,
if you can see that-
here's the thing, we will, it's the first time where we're given, before, they'll hear information,
Yeah.
and at some point in time, they'll accept input from the public, okay?
Right.
And at that point in time, a representative from the board can stand up and then read our recommendation. That's the other way of doing it, and be prepared to answer questions, if they will ask questions.
But I think this recommendation, Jake,
I like it, I like it.
It's very general,
Yeah.
and all he says really is we want to do what ACPD is recommending.
and he also explicitly addressed the monitoring. which I think is-
Yeah, I think it's an excellent, it covers all the points that we asked for, yeah.
And then
I'm
we
just saying,
can
in
have
case
more
we-
motions.
In case we change, what we do based upon what they actually recommend.
Sure.
Because right now, we're saying what they recommend, we haven't actually heard what they
We
recommend.
haven't, but my consideration is like, it's very hard for us to coalesce around a motion.
Mhm.
And we may not have quorum at the next meeting. I mean, there's a lot of things that
Yeah.
could like mess with that. And so I think we all kind of like Jay's motion and.
Oh, I do, yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I definitely won't vote against it, with the corrections made. I do think that we're gonna wanna revisit and perhaps add something for someone to go in person and
Sure.
say, and, if we hear something different, and, that's.
Good
that's
work,
one thing.
Jay.
We
But
need
you
to-
can still
You have an MOU mentioned in your
I didn't specifically say MOU, and the reason I didn't is, I think there probably, he suggested there might be other mechanisms, and so I didn't want to tie it to one. I just wanted to make the generic statement that it's contingent upon, monitoring compliance by the county.
Are there other means aside from MOUs?
monitoring and.
Legal
enforcement.
agreement.
Well, maybe that can
enforcement
be included,
compliance
MOUs
with
and the
data,
other
or
legal.
not?
Well, we don't know which it'll be. Let the lawyers decide how they actually work that out. We're just saying we want something
We're
that,
not really
point
doing
it allows.
If you have that written down, then I can type it.
Yeah, I do. Well, I'll have to give you, because we've got a few pencils.
And hopefully one of us will be at the meeting to make sure that the board understands that's what we were recommending.
What's that?
We want to make sure that someone from the board is
Yeah.
at that, so we can answer the question if they ask us. I've had them ask questions like that. What the hell were you guys recommending to us? Okay, and listen, what about this line, the terror part word for word? They did that on the fertilizer bill.
Hmm.
They were,
Yeah.
and, the ordinance they passed.
Yeah.
Got asked a lot of us.
Were they trying to
Typed out and
just
everything.
cover their butt, or pressed you against the wall.
Oh, no, it wasn't pressing, well, they're actually asking us and their staff, if we were making a slightly different recommendation.
Let me know.
And so I gave them the justification of why I'm coming up with that, and then they chose ours with that.
Hey, I'm not in the same thing now,
So,
but the minute we should have.
do we wanna? Okay.
Yeah, I do.
I mean, we're gonna have, this will be a
That's great.
documented.
Unless
You saved our breath, Jay.
And a little, to me, it doesn't flow real well, but it made perfect sense to you and everyone else, I'm fine with it.
Well, we wrote it as a committee, and slow is
Yeah,
not something that's associated with committee, right?
My-
But it's English.
Great, the only like piece that like I didn't fully understand was the restricted database, that.
Yeah.
But I thought, but we got.
Yeah, what I was trying to do there was really hammer the notion that the same old is not gonna work. Cutting edge,
Data driven.
data driven.
Yeah, I like it.
Based on latest environmental research in regards to land and water usage. That was.
Ooh, check that out.
Oh, no.
You had cutting edge data driven and you had latest,
Based on,
most current data.
oh, man.
Current knowledge of water
environmental-
usage.
Need a bottle right there.
Yeah, I like.
Data
I like
on
the
land use and environmental language?
But men and women in this one.
Which
No,
data?
what that-
Yeah, that's a good point.
Binders.
Do we need to say here
Based on the total numbers of horses there are.
data?
In Newberry.
You say down.
Okay. And then I'm leaving out the part where he goes to the SEO. I'm just trying to get the base, the core of it, so that.
You don't have to like it, you don't have to say.
Yeah, it's accurate that you put the SPL, Second Amendment, blah, 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 I didn't type all that, that's what that dot. And yes, SAS instead of SPL.
And the MOU is being included.
Are you guys gonna put an MOU? I mean, you can.
No,
offer
no,
that.
I thought we were leaving.
You don't think so?
I don't think we wanna hang ourselves on the cross of specificity there. I think-
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
that's a
we
good point.
leave that.
It's to the lawyers and how, whatever they want to.
Yeah.
Because again, they just do some kind of stuff. Maybe.
Yeah, like, so, and then after the meeting, I just realized all but one person is here, so I'd like to get a group photo after, I mean, I've been trying to stand up there and get one, but when Chris gets back in after the meeting.
I know you're always
This is
supposed
the committee to the sheriff's
decide your favorite phrase and then pick it out.
Yeah.
My favorite phrase is cut it in.
Yeah, but.
You know, kind of, I won't say no.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just,
The class of
I'm just trying to define cutting edge so that when they
I
hear it,
understand.
Yeah.
they don't think,
Yeah.
oh, we're.
That's why you take your favorite things and division.
Okay, I'll let you understand the 500 plus or minus acres that was set aside, right? Okay. Was that always in there?
The
Yes.
plus-
Written that- Oh, okay, I didn't do that.
Yeah, and Mike.
I
Your help.
I'm
Okay.
okay. I have a little wax.
Fresh idea, which is not a
Yeah,
compliment.
I know.
All right.
Yeah.
Why here? You have a lot of work to do here.
And I swear my motion.
I have those.
It's like my brother and I used to. And, you know, we hit each other.
Oh,
And my mother called us one time, you know, we went through a very excessive pain. And look, you know, you keep doing this, I was the one surprised, you keep doing that, you're gonna put an eye out, your brother. But I never did. You know, but on the other hand, I never was happy either, so, yeah.
So all I need now is how can I slide in the,
Yep, this is,
what's the end of,
But instead of SAP, you can say SAS, you guys.
yeah.
That sounds, yeah. And that's supposed to be
ACEPD. ACEPD.
Yeah, you see this for that. ACEPD.
ACEPD.
It's accepted in acronym. Whatever we call
Go HPD, that sounds like a TV show. Like Environmental Protection
Oh,
Department.
yeah.
All right. EPD. Okay. So I think
SAS,
that's where someone looked up, what do I?
except the SAS.
Oh, SAS.
Yeah, I just did dot, because you did the technical info, and it's just understanding that's how it's filled in with the.
Capitalize the A.
I'm under a lot of pressure.
Look at 'em.
Hey,
Yeah.
you did a good job, Dave, figuring that out. Are you still working on that? And I just thought you were sleeping back there.
I'm paying hourly, right? I'm checking if I'm being hourly, no, motion that the county accept the SAS, what is FCL? summary?
That's that whole sentence is like, he's supposed to study, that's the title.
Yeah, I put the whole thing in there so there wouldn't be any doubt about which document you were referring to.
The second supplement to the special area study, FCL Timber Land and Cattle LLC property.
Yes,
I would cut
You-
these all that.
Abbreviate that.
I just did that at FCL, because I can put that in later.
Agree.
Yeah, you
One
can
cut
type that in
over
later.
the other.
I love it.
Yeah, you really don't have to type all that right now, because I'm just
Okay.
doing modified anyway.
No problem, I definitely want that right now.
You feel comfortable doing that?
Better you than me.
You've been using our language.
I think, if,
Okay.
Summer modifies it and then sends it over to me to.
Okay.
pick up
For
now.
finalization.
Yeah.
You mean?
Oh, cause you were saying you were gonna actually like fill out,
Oh, he just did it.
oh, okay,
So that's the actual motion.
okay.
Timber land and cattle LLC property. This understanding is to inside the new usage, regulation,
That sounds downright.
But-
professional.
but-
Yep,
but-
it does, that actually sounds very good.
Yeah,
Pages scientific base, not science-based research from 100 years. ago.
yeah,
Right.
I still feel
Yeah,
like
like
that,
the
that,
state.
that area, I think needs some refinement. I would say from scientific.
Current,
basically-
how about current?
Well, this whole part, I think needs to be reworked to be more specific in terms of what we're calling, scientific based research.
Well, and here's one thing I'm concerned about, this is land that's, going in, over an unconfined portion of the, is there, or the aquifer, is there a way to state it, because the latest scientific, may not cover
Right.
something like that.
Okay, so, in 7:59, facilities will shut down this room, pretty shortly here. You need to open the floor for public comment. And I would just suggest that, as, was mentioned earlier, that this might look good tonight, but after you get the staff report, and if you all wanna go home and list out what you mean by latest scientific based research on land and water.
That's the one part I'm-
We could also get rid of that, because if it's pending staff recommendations, they're going to recommend things according to
Yeah.
the latest
Yeah.
scientific research.
Or superior than the latest.
Yeah, exactly, but they said that their recommendations were gonna go above and beyond.
There we go.
That's
Yeah,
what
I
I-
think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to express that this is what you're concerned about.
Yeah.
I'm all for supporting our staff, but if the commission were to get this paragraph from you all,
It would be accepted.
you would want them to know, what we spent, two or three meetings.
I'm comfortable with you guys working out between you the final words and making,
I don't think it detracts. It may be overstated in a certain, but they can subtract it out. They can modify.
Yeah.
Or we
You can
can,
make a final
at
decision
the
whether
the next meeting.
What are your issues and now?
As it's written now, did we venture too far from your intended, this is, we're discussing your.
well, I tried to make it a bit more generic by saying whatever the hell I said,
Cutting edge.
cutting edge,
And it says this is in lieu of saying as recommended by staff, okay? Right?
Yeah, so that's the only other part in here and that was my last question to Jay, was Jay incorporated the idea that we're basing this off of the county staff recommendation.
It's
and
more
that's not-
important that it hits that than this part, because this latest
Right.
scientific stuff right there,
Yeah.
that doesn't cover it.
Okay, so
Right.
how do we feel about just ditching this yellow part and replacing that with county, staff approval?
Yeah.
Based on county staff input, sorry.
Well, what does as modified by ACEPD mean?
Yeah, that's the same thing.
Oh,
That is,
I think,
E-
yeah, that's,
E-
that's, I think. that's-
ACEPD, I would put ACEPD staff, and then
Staff,
spit this out.
staff.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Like, that's it.
And then,
I'm okay with how they did. I think, I mean, obviously, like, you know, we could sit for another 2 hours and tinker with language and make sure it's like really catching everything precisely, but I think we're getting the gist across, and we're not tying our feet anyway.
yeah, everything.
All right, good job.
Yeah.
So,
I think
somebody needs to read it.
You want me to
and
read it out
second
loud?
it. I mean, just for a minute, we need to, Dave, so it was David made the motion and who seconded?
Hello.
Okay. And then who did it? Motion carried.
motion that the county accept the SAS second supplement to special area study, FCL Timber, Land and Cattle LLP property as modified by ACEPD staff, with the understanding that the 580 plus or minus acres set aside for institutional use will be developed and maintained based on the latest scientific-based research of land and water usage regulations, with compliance monitored and enforced by the county.
perfect.
That's great. Do we have a second?
Okay.
All in favor? Okay, motion passes.
Yay.
Wow.
Eight of three.
Don't keep your public comment period.
Oh, yeah, so.
Thank you, Jay.
Well done, Jay.
Well,
That's
so
right.
I want to take a minute to say one thing here, that one of the things we haven't considered is the fact of climate change effect of doing all of this. And but I'm gonna pick that up at our meeting, so.
So I do want to say, like I said at the beginning of the meeting, our land development code is currently about to undergo some regulations that are addressing climate issues.
Right.
It's gonna happen pretty quickly. Emily in our department is making the rounds to the climate action committee. She's gonna be the DCAC on the 13th of November with those changes. So this is, I would really like to get that on the next agenda.
Yeah.
If we can really parse it out. I know we're meeting on another.
Yeah, we need to wait.
We're making changes to our landscape code, we're making changes to our tree code, we're making code changes that are related to the climate, so
Yeah,
I
no,
just, I really wanna get that on our agenda, it's just, it's soon, we're gonna miss the boat.
yeah, no, we should do that for the next.
We
meeting.
should do that.
Have most of these already here, so we can kind of.
And if you don't have a copy of the letter that I'm referring to, make sure you grab a copy.
Yeah, like,
Hi, I'm Jen Garrett. I filed to run for County Commission District 3, and your property is in District 3. So that's why I'm here tonight. I just wanted to see what goes on in this committee, how it operates, the latest on what's going on with that property. So thanks for letting me sit in. My background, I don't have a ton of background in planning, but I did work for cultural resource management firm as an architectural historian. I worked for CERT, Southeastern Archaeological Research. We didn't have a ton of projects in Alaska. We had a lot of projects throughout the state of Florida. I mainly dealt with Florida 267 part of our state law. So it's nice to meet you. Thanks for letting me sit.
thank you. Can you tell us your name one more time? Sorry, name one more time?
Jen Garrett.
Jen Garrett.
And I think there's in the sign-in sheet. I think I got everybody on the sign-in sheet.
Well, I have a bunch of questions for you about historical cultural stuff, but.
Well, I'm here for you.
You did great.
No, we think you did great. We have a property adjacent right to that. We're touching the property.
Okay.
And I've been watching this for a couple of years. We've been there for 16 years, wondering what's going on with all this. So I think you guys addressed a lot of things
Yeah.
very well.
Just against the solar.
We're glad they lost.
Because.
Oh,
There's a lot of
yeah.
This is one of my friends, Sherry.
Thank you.
Yeah. What's that?
One of them, Sherry, right?
No?
They also order on the stuff.
All right.
Yeah, man.
The area of the road, up to that, so,
valuable for the city, the county, for the people to develop there and leave more protected areas further away and loans for the nature. The benefit is meant to be the extension of 46 to connect Newberry to Parker Road. And I think the county has something in mind at some point. And all the areas so developed that doing that you are doing with big parcels, big portion in conservation or green areas.
It balances well with the, you know, the low income housing they're proposing. I mean, they propose everything to make everybody happy. And we've got everything you did here, 100%. And I wouldn't worry about the weather too much. You know, to get warm,
Well,
to
we
get cold.
have a great
It'll be okay.
conservation in that area. I don't know how deep is the aquifer that we call the water table.
Yes.
Yeah, and I saw many cities over my years for that along. Growing, big cities, small cities, big small towns. And the way this one is developing in that area, keep contact there. Keep contact. It's inevitable. If you don't grow, you're still in the 8 block, and still what?
Well, meeting has not yet adjourned. As it is.
No, we can go ahead and.
Thank you for coming.
Thank
All,
you.
all, and for being a meeting and for coming and thank you for coming.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned. Don't.
Oh, we have to have a cookie for us.
Keep it in here. So, there's only one person here. I'm gonna. You wanna go on that side or on? Just sit on the table, it's fine, stand, whatever. You know, look like you're working or something, I don't know. Look like you're doing something. Oh, of course, the projector is. Right, messing up my mood. Good photography summer.
Or not.
Okay, there's one, there's two, and three, one more. Okay, how about a goofy one? No? You were? Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
No, just kidding, that's great, thank you so much. I don't know if you saw the website we have now, where we're posting all the agendas. It's sent a link, I'll resend it, because all your info is kind of on there, I kept it, it's just got your names, but. Yeah, all the advisory boards have new websites now, so. Right now, there's just a picture of like a sinkhole in my book.
Is the engineer in this project, is it CHW?
Well, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know them.
Well, that's what Mark was kind of getting at, was that nobody does, they're not local, and so they would switch when they get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
They would switch to. Oh, good
Like
night.
like a larger out of state or something?
Yeah, Jacksonville. And yeah, they're just.
Oh, they're out of town. Okay.
How invested in this portion of the process. So, right, that's what happened. But. So, I mean, that's just speculation. Yeah, right now, that's the engineer, that everybody likes local.
Well, here's my card, if you have preservation questions.
So many.
It's been a minute since I worked in CRM, but
Yeah.
I did a lot of it.
Well, we just actually, what I was kind of worried about the other day was we got something that said, what did it say? It said that the state is no longer doing review of projects that aren't eligible for the National Register.
How do you know it? That you do the draft?
Right. So that I'll call you, but I'm feeling a little better to just kind of talk a little bit about it, but I'm actually, my boss asked me to just call the state in the next couple of weeks and get some clarity on that, because we have.
They said they're no longer doing review.
They're not providing letters of concurrence. Yeah, it was such a big deal with one of these projects. We sent them a bunch of info, and I asked my boss, Mark, I was like, is that accurate? We always ask for a concurrence letter.
Yeah.
Because it's not eligible. Yeah, and then they wrote back and said, we're not reviewing them unless they are eligible. But then we're sitting here going,
Does that mean you still are?
provide them the, yeah, it doesn't make, so I have to call and ask them, let me read it when I have a little bit, like,
Okay.
more chance on this literally, like, my boss and I were just talking about this for like an hour yesterday, the chicken and the egg. So do we keep asking for things? Of course we want to keep asking for this. We have people, a lot of it has to do with archaeological stuff too.
Right.
Yeah, so that's just the gist of it. I just wanted to bounce off somebody with it said.
Well, I wonder if the site file with it, if it already has a site file with the state. And maybe it is, the state's already made
Oh, I got you.
a
Yeah.
recommendation that you don't have to do it again. That would just save you time. Money. So, I mean, I definitely can't like recommend anything. I'm not an attorney. I'm not, you know, I can only give you my best guess. But Kathleen Kaufman at the city might also be. She's very sort of. But you can just message me.